Well, I did not feel that the two are linked. My concern with Justice Anderson, when I was dealing with him, had to do with what I perceived to be his involvement in Guyanese politics, when he should be an impartial arbiter. I want to make it clear, it has nothing to do with this case with Mohammed. I made these comments since last October, I think it was. No, sorry. It's in this year, sorry. Last October is when I met him before. But it was in this year, before the Mohammed case.
So, do you see a parallel between the concerns raised about Justice Anderson inserting himself in Guyana's judicial appointments and his approach to politically sensitive matters in Guyana?
I need to give you some background before. Apparently, the government was going to appoint, at the time, Justice Roxanne George and Navindra Singh to Chancellor and Chief Justice, respectively. I got some missed calls from Justice Anderson. And eventually, the General Secretary of our party, Sheldon Benjamin, called me and told me that he wanted to speak to me urgently. When I actually called him, he said to me a few things that to me were disturbing. One was that Yonette Cummins, the then acting chancellor, had agreed to go, making way for somebody else. He said that she was satisfied with the package that she got from the government. So I asked him how he knew that. And he said he was part of the negotiation in some regard, or he facilitated. I found that strange. I found it odd that he should be involved in that. Then he proceeded to ask me if I am prepared to give agreement to the appointment of Roxanne George Wilshire and Navindra Singh. Initially, I said no. And he said to me, look, she had agreed, etc. I then took the position that I cannot without engaging Roxanne. And I didn't engage Roxanne direct. Sorry, not Roxanne. Justice Cummins. I did not engage her directly. I engaged someone who I knew was close to her and asked that person to verify if it is true that she was satisfied and she had accepted this offer, etc. When the person got back to me, the person didn't say that she accepted it. What the person said to me is that, look, Roxanne asked if Yawashi did, and that she did in fact agree to go. To me, that wasn't voluntary. And so I said at that point, I'm not comfortable with it. Then I was told that, this is by Justice Anderson, that, no, I should go before that. I then had a discussion with the president. And the president said that a letter was on its way asking me to agree with the appointment. I received the letter. And he also said it was confidential, which I found laughable. Anyhow, from the time the letter arrived at my phone, Gordon Mosley called me to ask me if it is true a letter was sent. Remember the time I didn't see because he just told me that, and that also raised eyebrows that I was being asked this, told a particular narrative, and out of the blue, somebody from the press called. I think at that time I told Gordon I didn't have any letter and I will get back to him. Then I had one other engagement or two other engagements with Justice Anderson. And he said to me that the president and them were waiting to swear in these two persons. So I said, how you know that? And he said to me he was there. I don't remember if he said at office of the president or State House, but he said he was there with the president. I then said to him, I have serious concerns. And even though I was thinking through it, I was calling other people in the judicial system to find out their views on this. And at that point, I asked him, and he said he was in Guyana and he was with the president. I don't think he said that after President or State House. He said he was with the president. I found that strange. I then said that I will get back to you. And then I stopped taking his calls because I had made it very clear to Justice Anderson in a meeting in October, in the presence of other opposition parties, that I was not prepared to let them push out Justice Cummins. I also said the same thing to the president before that I am not prepared to agree for Justice Cummins to be pushed out. And that has been my principal position all along. At the end of the ordeal, I spoke to a few people and said to them, whatever little confidence I had in the Caribbean Court of Justice, I lost all. I also pointed some people to the behavior of the Caribbean Court of Justice during the impasse of the 2020 elections. And what happened then was just confirmation that politicians in Guyana were involved in the judicial process to the point where they were seeking to determine the outcome. And it is from that standpoint I see similarities. Outside of that, none.
Now, Justice Arif Volkan would have contributed to this this discourse with the emails that were passing among the justices within the CCJ, and that his concerns were published by the Express, I believe today, and he made reference to concerns that were raised by Prime Minister Kamala of Trinidad, in relation to the influences of judges and so on when it comes to rulings in the region. How do you think that this is going to affect other countries joining the CCJ in light of Justice Anderson, reaching out or calling for other territories to join the CCJ?
Look, in principle, we supported the CCJ. Our founder, leader Forbes Burnham, was one who very long ago said that there's need for a Caribbean court. And so in principle, we support a Caribbean Court of Justice. But it has to be impartial. It has to live by judicial culture of independence and separation of powers. And to me, Justice Anderson was involved in some amount of overreach. And that raises questions about the independence of the Caribbean Court of Justice. And this has to be taken in the context of Guyana. One of the reasons I was not going to, even if Yonet Cummins had said that she was comfortable with it, was a clear deal, I still would have had reservations because I am concerned And I think I made this point to Justice Anderson when I think he said to me that Roxanne George was an Afro-Guyanese and at least you got one. And he also said that it is a good opportunity for me to put my name in the history book, something to that effect, by being the person that solved the impasse with the Chancellor and Chief Justice. And I said to him, I don't see it that way. In my book, The Judicial in Guyana's Compromise, I think I pointed out that though I respect Roxanne George as a person, and I have no problem with her, I find a lot of her rulings are in favor of the government, and there's sometimes the skillful use of law to rationalize. If I recall, I did point to the Caribbean Court of Justice actually claiming to have jurisdiction in the elections commission matter, when my reading of the Constitution that it was really the appeal court. So I have had serious concerns about the Caribbean Court of Justice and its approach. And mind you, this is not just linked to Justice Sanders. I felt Justice Sanders behaved the same way in terms of the conflict of interest and this unwillingness to be impartial. That's only my thing.
There has been a call for Justice Anderson to resign in light of what has happened to actually protect the integrity of the CCJ. And one of the persons making this call has been your party member and member of parliament, Dr. Terence Campbell. Is this a position you support?
Well, I don't know what Dr. Terence Campbell said. What I can say to you is this. There are two issues here. The first one was the one I was involved in. And from that position, I disagree with the approach of Justice Anderson. I am reading in the press this concern that he is dictatorial. I have no information except what the justices put out about him being dictatorial and authoritarian. I want to make that very clear. So I'm not here commenting on what is happening in the Caribbean Court of Justice because I am not au fait with the details to make such a pronouncement. But I want to say two things. One, I felt that Justice Anderson came into the political fray in Guyana, and for that reason, I think he should not be the person actually in charge of the Caribbean Court of Justice. The other issue, I would think that that is going to unravel itself as the discussions removal on the basis of an issue that I'm not very much knowledgeable of. In fact, when I read what is written, the judges themselves call for an internal meeting so that they could discuss the issue and avoid it from arriving at crisis proportion. And if the justices were that cautious, I would go there saying he should resign on an issue that I govern the decent thing.
For Caribbean citizens, I know that you would have done a lot of work in the region. Your party would have supported the formation of CARICOM, a lot of the regional bodies that we have today falling on the CARICOM, your party would have supported. We are still fighting to have full regional integration and so on in the region. But something like this, being viewed by ordinary citizens throughout CARICOM, what does this actually mean?
Okay, let me say this. Integration is not a straight line. In every integration movement, there is movement towards integration simultaneously with movement towards disintegration. By the very nature of integration, it can be problematic. We in the PNCR and the APNU are firm believers in integration. In fact, I actually said to President Irfan Ali in one of our discussions that I think from foreign policy standpoint, we should develop a petro foreign policy approach in which we seek to help Caribbean countries gain their support, while at the same time helping them. So I do believe integration, that there is no straight path to national development. Every act you take will, some of it will produce integration, some will produce disintegration. We have seen in the Caribbean where when countries became like the power region, they tend to move away from integration and become kind of insular. My own approach has been the countries that become powerful should see themselves as the base for helping other small and weak Caribbean countries to integrate, because integration allows us a number of things, including ensuring that there's a wider market, economies of scale, and a number of other things that I think will redound to the benefit of CARICOM. So because of this incident, I don't want to say CARICOM is dead. CARICOM will always have problems. And really and truly, the task is to reform the CCJ so it operates as an independent court and is insulated from governments in the Caribbean, so that it can serve the citizens of the Caribbean without them having to worry that they could be bribed, they could be influenced. I'm one who say regularly, I cannot be bribed, nobody could bribe me, and I live by that. And even with this matter, I dealt with it on principle. I didn't care much about the other things. And so I would say, let's reform, but save it as an institution, because the very politics in a place like Guyana will demand that you need another level of appeal. Right now in Guyana, if you go to the courts, you're 99% sure that once the issue has politics in it, the courts will rule in favor of the government. And to the extent that there is the Caribbean Court of Justice, it could be an impartial arbiter if it operates as such. The problem is some people seem to be compromising the integrity of the Caribbean Court of Justice by getting it involved in the politics of particular countries, and that, I have no doubt, is militating negatively against the Caribbean Court of Justice. But that in itself shouldn't be taken as something for to be anti-integration. I believe integration has positives. Integration produces positives. Concomitantly, it produces negatives. It is our task to accentuate the positives and attenuate the negatives so that we can develop a Caribbean region that produces and is successful.
And Mr. Norton, my last question. I know that some countries have been saying that we're not going to join the CCJ. We're going to hold on to the Privy Council, but then we are, for Guyana and other countries, we are observing emancipation, the abolition of slavery. We have been fighting for reparatory justice and so on. When things like these happen, do you believe that there is a setback for these fights that other leaders are pushing for when it comes to reparatory justice and so on?
Let me put it this way. I am a believer that law must reflect society and culture. Even when I was listening to the Caribbean Court of Justice rulings in the elections cases in Guyana, it was clear to me that many of them didn't understand the Guyana system. They are more knowledgeable of the systems in their countries, which are similar. But in our case, it was totally different. And I think our lawyers failed to give the cultural context. Now, having said that, all the Caribbean countries will have different cultural contexts. But as a general Caribbean, there's some general contents. And so I believe that the Privy Council cannot serve us in good stead, since their cultural context is far removed from us. There are little or no similarities. And so I rule out the Privy Council. But you cannot remove the fact that there will be people who want the Privy Council. There are still people in this world who believe the best thing since sliced bread is British. I don't agree, but that is their view. And there are still people who do not believe in our own abilities. I am one who believes in our abilities. I'm not here saying that we do not have faults. We do not make mistakes. What I'm saying is that I think we have the intellectual and other capacity to deliver proper judgments based on an understanding of the Caribbean and the law. But that some people are losing their way. And as they lose their way, they put the wider struggle for emancipation in jeopardy, including justice for what was done to us in slavery. But I should make one other point. It does, when there's behavior like this, it does have negative impact on the process. But we need to be matured enough to know that whichever system we choose, it will have negative impact. And it is for us to keep it under constant review and do the things necessary to ensure we overcome the crisis and move forward. Like I said before, I don't believe development goes in a straight line. It goes, you progress, you retrogress, and then you progress again, and you can move on. It is for us to take this approach that understands the dynamics of the countries in the Caribbean, the specific countries and the general Caribbean culture, and for us to develop a legal framework that serves the people of the Caribbean and the people in individual countries so that they become confident that when a ruling comes from the Caribbean Court of Justice, it is fair and not biased by the thinkings and actions of politicians. And again, I do believe that politicians, like countries, will pursue what they perceive to be their interests. And there are times when it is not in their interest to lose, and therefore they will seek to influence outcomes. The judges and the institutions that have established have got to be cognizant of that and ensure that they insulate themselves from such activity and operate in a way that the people of the Caribbean will feel confident that they can deliver justice.
Mr. Norton, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.